Oh, hello, bird nerds, plant nerds, gardeners. I'm Grant. I am a bird nerd. I'm also a horticulturist, and you are in the Bird Emergency Habitat Gardening Saturday morning live stream. And the whole point of doing this is to just talk about a few timely issues. Sometimes we're going to talk about plants to grow, and we are going to talk about that today. Today, I'm focusing on two issues. One is something that I think is important to think about when you are out buying plants and to think a little bit about where they come from. Oh, and also, I'd like to say hello, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, uh, Twitter, or X. You're all here today. Um, and I just want to bring something to your attention to help you make decisions when you're going out to purchase plants. And purchasing plants retail has become difficult. I think that's something I would be prepared to say, especially when it comes to the breadth of species that are available. And I think there's one main reason for that. So, in weeks coming down the track, I'll try and make it easier for you to have some other options rather than what we will be talking about today. And but we'll get to that in a minute. The first thing I wanted to just talk to you about was this bird. And if you're regular on the Bird Emergency, you know that I am really, really concerned about the long-term future of the swift parrot. It breeds in Tasmania. It breeds in tree hollows, and it's a very specialised feeder. It's very picky. Apparently, that's what the most of the documentation tells me. It's a very picky feeder. And where it grows, where it breeds, there's now been an increase. It looks like another 30% increase in saw logs that are going to be taken out of the old growth forest in Tasmania, where the swift parrot breeds. So there's a couple of things the swift parrot needs. The obvious thing is protection. The obvious thing is habitat protection. But maybe, and I'm not trying to overplay this, but maybe there are some things that you or we can do outside of anything that government may be going to do. And by government, I mean every government, Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales, that are the bulk, ACT as well, where the swift parrot either breeds or winters. If you're on the mainland, it's about providing food. If you are in Tasmania, it's about providing food and somewhere where the parrot may breed. Artificial nest boxes, I'm not really sure, or artificial, man-made or man-provided, human-provided hollows. I'm not sure how. I'm not sure how successful that has been. I'm not sure how common it even is. But let's start with maybe doing something rather than not doing something because we don't know if it's going to work. I think it's desperate straits. The swift parrot is critically endangered. And I saw a tweet this week from Sean Dooley from BirdLife Australia, and Sean has a property in, I think it's on the northeast side of Melbourne. I'll see if I can find it. When I play the video later, I'll see if I can find it. But by the population estimates and the birds that Sean had seen on the property that he is maintaining as a nature refuge, he thought he saw 6% of all the swift parrots in the world, and I think he might have been talking about 16 birds, or might have been 9 birds. Anyway, I'll try and find that tweet. If anyone, for those of you on Twitter, if you have identified it, or even if you're not on Twitter, if you're on one of the other platforms and you have it, pop the link up or something, or in the comments, and maybe we'll get to it. Okay. The swift parrot migrates. It breeds in the summer months and migrates to mainland Australia, and it is a very picky feeder. It feeds on the outer canopy of eucalyptus and corymbia species blossoms, but not just any old blossom. So what I'm going to look at now is a couple of the published plants that the swift parrot is known to feed on, both in the wild, but more particularly parks, gardens, and other altered landscapes. Personally, I've seen the swift parrot feeding in the lemon-scented gum, which is now Corymbia citriodora. I've seen it feeding in spotted gum, which is Corymbia maculata, and I have seen it feeding in the ironbark, and I've seen it feeding in both the pink/red and yellow ironbark flowers, and that's eucalyptus. What is it? Sideroxylon. Eucalyptus sideroxylon. But let's just have a look at what some of the experts have indicated. And I might just let you know, if you're on Instagram, watching on Instagram, Heidi Yuko, if you're watching, I will be swapping back here and there, and you can pop questions or comments in. That's the other thing I forgot to tell you. This is all about questions and comments. Naomi is first up. Hi, Grant. Interesting article on swift boxes and nest boxes. Okay, I may well have looked at that one. I will. We might come back to that one shortly. I want to concentrate mostly on providing food. And the reason this cropped up, and it's not what I had planned, but while I was scrolling through Twitter and Facebook, I was noticing on many of the bird watching and bird ID apps that there'd been quite a lot of swift parrots, and by quite a lot I mean 2s and 3s, being seen in northern Melbourne, north central Victoria, on golf courses, parks, and in the box ironbark forests, and on towns on the fringes of those towns where there are still box ironbark forests nearby. So I just thought, if the birds are being seen outside of prime habitat, perhaps they're adapting. Perhaps they're becoming quite uh, uh, more adventurous in their in what they're prepared to eat. So I thought we'll just share a bit of that. And Naomi says, yes, just thought a good read for any Tassie listeners or watchers. Yeah, we'll get onto that in a minute. Naomi, now you're an interesting case, Naomi, because you've got family in one part of the Sydney region. You're living in another, and you will have an influence on some property further out. Now, you particularly may not be having Swifties come to your place, but I think a lot of people right through, well, and anywhere in Melbourne and southeast of Melbourne, right through central Victoria, through south central, central east, right up. I think the extent. Let's have a look. Let's just have a look at the range. Let's just have a look at the range as BirdLife say. Well, they're not really giving us a range, are they? Feeding, breeding. Okay. I'll find a better. I'll find a better range indicator as we go. But I'm going to start with the BirdLife description of what they eat, and then we'll look at some that are a little bit more descriptive. Swift parrots feed in the outer canopy of flowering eucalypts, eating mainly nectar, but they will eat psyllids and lerps, seeds and flowers. But their preference is for nectar, often hanging upside down. At sites where food is abundant, swift parrots can congregate in large flocks and associate with smaller lorikeets and honeyeaters. Every time I've seen swift parrots, there have been musk lorikeets in the same tree. Not necessarily side by side, but they're certainly travelling in that flock. In dry years, when eucalyptus flowering is poor, swift parrots are forced to travel far and wide to find enough food. Some birds fly as far as coastal southeast Queensland, making the world's longest known parrot migration. Now, I hadn't really picked up on that, so there we go. So let us have a look. Here's the recovery plan for the swift parrot. This is, I think, 2011. Yeah, here it is. I just want to get down to where's the foraging in page 6. Oh, here's a range map. There's a range map from 2000. Grant, share the right tab. Now, this is from the threatened species recovery plan for the swift parrot. And as I mentioned, this was published in 2011. So, in Tasmania, they prefer. Yeah, thanks, Naomi. That certainly does. eBird shows actual records. But eBird doesn't have the feeding information, so I'm ignoring eBird today. The Tasmanian blue gum, Eucalyptus globulus, they feed mostly on that, and I believe the white gum, manna gum. But we'll talk mainly about the mainland, because what I'm concerned about is that as more and more of the the box ironbark um, forests slash woodlands that are present uh, on the mainland are being cleared for farmland. At the same time, the a lot of street trees and whatnot that they have been feeding on, like in Melbourne and in other coastal in other regional towns and cities, as housing is spreading, a lot of those sort of park trees that are mature and a part of uh, the the canopy, the flowering canopy, they're also disappearing. So that's where I think replanting into gardens can, and if you're looking to make choices for nature strip trees, if you are in a municipality where you're allowed to pick your own plant, your own tree to put on your nature strip, I think this is one of the things I would like people to really consider, that it can make a huge difference for those years where there's drought, and you'd be looking at. I'm just having a look at what species they mention in here. They're saying just species Eucalyptus spur. Now in yeah, we won't dwell on that one too much. Okay, this is from New South Wales Local Land Services. Swift parrot. Where's the plant list? Okay. Where is the plant list? Okay. Mugger ironbark, white box. That was what I meant, not white gum. White box, grey box, yellow box. Will come out to. This is the one I wanted. Natural Resources Management. This is a Tasmanian site. Swift parrots need you to look after your blue and black gums. So that is the blue gum, Eucalyptus globulus, and the black gum, Eucalyptus ovata. Now in Victoria, and I believe New South Wales, if you're looking for Eucalyptus ovata, it will be called the swamp gum. So I'm sure if you can coax your swamp gums to flower at this time of year, then you may be helping. What I have been seeing, apart from Eucalyptus sideroxylon, which is the ironbark, many of the sites mention the Eucalyptus leucoxylon, and Eucalyptus leucoxylon is in flower now around this area, and I know in parts of South Australia. I'm sure it is right through into central New South Wales and up the coast. The great thing about Eucalyptus leucoxylon is that it can be quite small, and there are quite a few varieties, and colour variants, because you can go from white, yellow, pink to a really dark pink, and you can probably get staggered flowering times. So consider that. Eucalyptus, Corymbia ficifolia, or the red flowering gum, is also noted in a couple of the photo records that I saw in the bird watching groups in the last week. There are still some red flowering gums flowering around Melbourne now, so it will obviously be the case in other parts of the country. And there were some sightings of swift parrots on the red flowering gums. So that was cool. Now, this is from ABC Science, and I was just looking for winter flowering gums, and this is from a number of years ago. But uh, again, they're featuring plants for the swift parrot, and because they're on the mainland in autumn and winter, and maybe some laggers in the early part of spring. So they're talking about red ironbark, which is Eucalyptus sideroxylon, yellow gum, which is Eucalyptus uh, melliodora, I think. Inland grey box, I can't remember. We'll look that up in a minute. And then I'm sure some of the other boxes would do the trick. But that gives you some idea there. We're looking at, no, we're not looking at the right one, are we? Oh, Grant, get with it. Get with it. Here we are. So I'll just read this again. The swift parrot counts on Victorian winter flowering gums as part of its winter diet as it wheels between Tasmania and Victoria each year, with favourites such as the red ironbark, again, Eucalyptus sideroxylon, yellow gum, Eucalyptus melliodora, inland grey box. The swift parrot's picky tastes leave it vulnerable as Victoria's ironbark box forest, typified by ironbark and box eucalypt species, face land clearance. Yes, and I think this was published in, I can't remember, I think from memory this was 2009 or something. No, 2019. Okay, so they're saying 1,000 swift parrots left. Okay, that's the same thing. We don't need that. Okay. Naomi, I'm going to NESP, threatened species. I'm just going to get that link up about the nest boxes. And if you've got questions or comments about anything, let's get some of those up to talk about as well. Oh, that's a good question, Naomi. We'll get to that in a minute. I'll just leave that until after we get to the Swift parrot nest boxes. Okay, when was this published? I always like to know that. Okay, so this was Dr. Swift Parrot, and I think Kat was on this. Kat Young, I think, was they're monitoring these nest boxes too. Okay, let's share this tab. Okay, there's the team from the Threatened Species Recovery Hub. Who was running this whole project? This is a recovery team. Rob Heinsohn, Fernanda Elves, David Lindheimer, Matt Webb, and so there's the nest boxes that they were using. I was hoping that there might be some dimensions or anything. Okay, is that the Oh, this might be the article you were talking about. No, out of the box. Um, is that the article you were talking about, Naomi? Just let me know. Um, which I think. Right, we won't go right through that. I'm going to keep hold of that, and I think it's time we did another Nest Boxes um, program, and yeah, I think we'll do an in depth uh, of that. Um, yeah, I think Naomi just letting me know. Yes, that's the right article, and it does have some interesting tips. It's so small that the type you won't be able to read it. So I think what I will do is I'll try and get some interviews happening from some of the team, and we will, about protecting from sugar gliders. Yeah, that's one of the main things that they found. Apart from the fact that there are so few hollows because of the clearing that is happening, and also remember every time there's a bushfire and every time someone takes one tree out that is hollow bearing because they want to have improve community safety or something in a park or in a town, that's really important. And what's happening is sugar gliders are there's competition for hollows with all the birds that are hollow nesting, all the animals that require hollows, but sugar gliders are now predating uh, swift parrot chicks. So yeah, I think it's well and truly time that I did an interview or two about the swift parrot with the team. In years gone by, when I've reached out, no one has been available to speak. So hopefully that isn't going to be the case from now. Right, Naomi, you had a very good question. And the question is, if you plant one of these types of gums, how long until they flower from tube stock generally? Now, that's going to depend on the species. And this is where the question, and leads in a little bit to what I want to talk about sourcing plants. And uh, I might answer the question after we've had a look at the video and I've made some comments about the issue. And Naomi, I'm putting a star on that, and that means it goes to the top, and I'm always going to find it. Now, Naomi, you may have found that you can go to a nursery, and I might have given you a list of 10 plants that you might be looking for, and you'll go to the nursery and there is nothing there. And you may go to some of the websites and they've got stock lists. And we've done this a few times on the show where I will find plants that I think would be great to grow, and then you find a grower that's got them listed and it's always out of stock. Now, it's not necessarily out of stock because they've sold everything. One of the reasons that they may be out of stock is that that they are no longer able to grow that plant. And what I want to do now is play you a video, and then we're going to look at some of the other what am I looking for? We'll look at I'll go through some of the articles that are reinforcing this problem, and then I'll talk about, and this will answer your question, I think, Naomi, about how long it takes. It's different with every plant, but there are some different strategies, I think, to employ. So we'll talk about that first. Now, I would like to introduce you to Nick Powell, who owns and runs Stanmore Horticultural. And he's a grower of mostly indoor plants in the that sort of scenic rim and Glasshouse Mountains, Queensland, Gold Coast hinterland region. Now, I just want, even though he grows indoor plants mainly, this highlights one of the reasons why, when you want to go and buy 4 or 5 different varieties of eucalypts or banksias or callistemons, and the only place that you've got it that is convenient to buy plants in your local area is a big box hardware store, you end up generally not coming away with what you want. And this is now a massive... I've known about it for a long time, but I didn't know it was as bad as it has got. And we'll talk about, or I will give my opinion on some of the things Nick Powell has said. And then I'll show you some more coverage, and I'll talk about what I think we need to do, we consumers need to do.
When you deal with Bunnings, you soon get used to the idea that you have no power. You very much go cap in hand to the organisation, and they will have a personality that's strong enough to control you to the point where you virtually give up and just do as you're told. We started supplying Bunnings from about 25 years ago, and in the early days they wasn't too onerous on suppliers. We had to jump through a few hoops, had to give them their piece of gold, so to speak, with their settlement discounts. They didn't put too many conditions on us for the type of product we grew. But as time went on, then it was a roller coaster of, we need you to do this, we need you to do that. No, we're not going to let you have a say. We were never offered a contract. We had to supply on virtually not even a handshake. We didn't get the benefit of a handshake. We were just told, if you do this, this and this, we will take that product at this time of the year, and you would set up your production processes to suit. Bunnings would never go out on a limb and be beholden to you to supply stock under a contract. And this was what made the nursery game such a tentative proposal, because there was never ever a guarantee of getting your product into the stores once they've said, you can grow it for us. The pressure mounts all the time, and with each imposition that Bunnings puts on you, mentally it takes its toll. Freight in Bunnings, years gone by, we put out some money for...
I'll just want to stop you. This is what is really, really important. And not only is there Bunnings, there's also a couple of other sort of retail groups that band together to buy as a buying group, and they have different conditions that you must meet to supply them. But this is something I didn't know about, and this is another way that Bunnings skims money from the industry, because they charge rebates or they have settlement discounts, but they took away the ability for independent growers to reduce their own costs. Now, listen to this story.
Out some money for a truck, and we would do our own distribution to the local Bunnings stores, and then we would organise for freight companies dedicated plant carriers to take our stock down to New South Wales and Victoria. At one stage of the game, Bunnings decided to put the pressure on growers to do away with all of their own private freight arrangements. Even if they had their own truck, they weren't going to accept you delivering your product straight to the store. So people who'd gone out on a limb and borrowed $150,000 for a truck could no longer use it for that purpose. That's when the cost taken off our invoice for the distribution was the nail in the coffin for us.
So let's just unpack that. A grower like Nick here has invested maybe $150,000 on a truck, and then there's maybe $70,000 to $100,000 in labour for a driver, and they've got and they've invested in all of the equipment to efficiently load and unload plants. So there's racking inside the trucks and everything. So we're talking, maybe if you look over a 5-year period, it might be $500,000 when we're putting the wages and everything in. So they control their own costs, and they deliver to Bunnings. They will deliver to maybe half of the Bunnings network on their own. And then Bunnings say no, and then Bunnings say you can't use one of the specialist plant transport vehicle companies who have made that investment already to pick up from any growers and then deliver to any retail nursery. Bunnings will say, no, you can't have your own contract with them. We will contract, and then we will charge you for the cost of delivery. But you've got no input into what that cost is. So that's another place where the costs are landed on you. And Bunnings don't actually charge you for the transport in terms of invoicing you for it. What they do is, and this is where Bunnings are absolute pirates. Let's have a look at one of those plants in the background there. They look like they might be 6 or 8 inch, which is 140 to 200 mil pots. Let's just say one of those is supplied to Bunnings for $6.50. They'll have a settlement discount, which means, and they're probably telling you they won't pay you for, I don't know, let's say 60 days, maybe 90 days. So they're pushing the settlement terms way out, and they might take 4.5% off. Might be more. I know when I was working in the industry, that was a pretty normal number. You might say, I would like you to pay it 60 days. And I'll say, okay, the settlement discount will be 10%. So they just take 10% off the cost of the plant. And now they're saying, you now have no control for the distribution or anything, and we're going to put maybe 2%, or maybe it's 3.5%, or maybe it's 6%. I don't know what the number is. But they'll say, for the whole amount of the invoice, we're going to withhold that because that's our freight cost. It just comes straight off your margin. But we'll have a look at it again with some of the information that came out in the Senate inquiry the other day. But they're not even having a contract. When I worked in a large production nursery, and that nursery sold lots of stuff to Bunnings, lots of stuff like gardenias and climbers, also to the supermarkets. Climbers, so there would be there'd be a mixed dozen go out. We'd put a tray together of a dozen different climbers. But there was a contract to supply, I don't know, must have been 100,000 of them that we would push out. But now they don't even do a contract. So they'll tell you, and remember, it's going to take 12 months. You've got to put these things at this volume into your production schedule. Someone's got to go out and take the cuttings. You've got your propagation team sitting in the prop warehouse doing the cuttings, and then it's taken out into a growing on area and then potted up from the tube into the whichever size pot they're going to buy, and then it's put out into the grow on area, and then it's weeded, and then it's pruned, and then it's brought back in and a stake put in, and then there's a label put in, and then it's packed, and then it's picked up and sent to the nursery. There's a lot of labour involved, and it's fairly small margins. And now what this fella is telling us is that maybe a year ago, Bunnings would say to a grower like this, sure, we'll take $100,000 of your spathiphyllums, but they're not going to sign a contract, and they're not going to guarantee that they're going to buy them. But you've still got to grow them to have any chance of selling them. And in 10 or 15 years, the amount of possible places that you could grow, that you could sell if Bunnings don't buy them, has reduced to bugger all. So anyway, we'll finish up with what Nick's saying.
We were ground down to virtually nothing, and then it was a case of, well, where do we get the money from to pay wages? Where do we get the money from to pay for truckloads of potting mix, pallets of fertiliser? We then had to be more than savvy to survive, and that the mental anguish in that was just too much for us. And I had the comment with my manager, we've just got to change or this will kill me. I think it's time that people got off their backsides and started telling it how it is with these big companies. Many of these big companies have this total control over the supply, and it's always unfair on the people who grow for them, and it's never unfair for Bunnings.
Okay, now I just want to say that there is a petition at the moment aimed at pressuring the government to ensure that Bunnings are included in the same code of conduct as supermarkets, as Coles and Woolworths. The petition is at change.org/greenlife, but there is the page. I would encourage you, please, to go and sign it. When you do a change.org petition, you can elect to have your name and whatnot pop there, or else you can remain anonymous. Now, why is Bunnings problematic? I'm just going to have a look at some of the news coverage that was up this week. SBS. Growers are scared. Exploitation fears spark Bunnings scrutiny calls. Now, most growers consider that Bunnings have a monopoly. Most growers are saying that Bunnings controls 70% of Australia's green life sector, where plants are sold on to gardeners, so the retail sector. it's it's completely in Bunnings' favour, because to make plant, if you already, here's the thing I want people to understand: if you have already invested millions into a production facility, and I'm talking millions, you've got to have just the cost of digging a dam and maintaining the pumps, uh, and the irrigation infrastructure is massive. Then you've got to think of, maybe you've got glass areas for propagation. You've got shaded areas for growing on. You've then got outdoor areas for further growing on and hardening off. You've got to have an area where you can have trucks pull up to load. You've got to have such a capital intensive operation to begin with, and then every move you make is a gamble for production with Bunnings. Now, I had always known that there were growers who had contracts and that the contracts were low margin, but at least they could then know what their baseline for income would be, and then they could go off and do markets, and they could do mail order, and they could do other stuff. They could expand and diversify. But if the bulk of your production you are growing on a whim, that means your business is completely unsustainable. And no doubt that is why so many production nurseries have actually opted to cease operation, and then they sell off the land because they're big plots of land, and that goes into housing or whatever. But it takes another grower out of the market. I don't want to actually, I think I'll leave that there. I might do a special. I might do a special in depth and interview quite a few people about this. But how it relates back to your question, Naomi, about if you plant one of the plants that I've been recommending, how long does it take for the plant to flower? Now, if you're going from tube stock, you're going to be talking for eucalypts that are quite long lived. You're looking at 10, 15 years. You might get lucky and get a few earlier. So for these one-off kind of purchases, I would be recommending to you that you would go back to where are we? To look at some of the cultivars of these plants that are available and not buy them as tube stock. If you're looking at buying many, many, many of them, certainly do tube stock. But I would encourage you to go for 1, 2, 3 or more of these plants that you can buy that are more advanced, maybe growing in an 8 or a 10-inch pot. And maybe I'll curate a list, Naomi, for you, but you will see a lot of the cultivars, and I'll just pop this is just what I'm looking at Google at the moment. Eucalyptus winter light. So look at the cultivar names. Yuki dwarf. You've got the red flowering gum there. A bunch of these when you buy them, they're almost at the flowering stage. You can buy a number of the Eucalyptus leucoxylon cultivars or selections that will flower fairly quickly. Um, but if you're looking at something like a lemon scented gum, eucalyptus or Carimbia, um, citriodora, or the red flowering gum, and you grew that from seed, and you were looking at waiting for it to flower, you might be looking at 20, 25 years. Uh, uh, okay, there we are. Naomi's just saying she's been on the change.org petition, is on page 5. Um, I just went straight to it. So I've got the petition right here. So anyway, yeah, just I'm sure the silly stuff about sausages is about how Bunnings does all the sausage sizzles or something. I don't know. I've got to say, I've never bought a sausage at Bunnings. I don't go to Bunnings for sausages, and if possible, I don't go to Bunnings. That's really the lesson. So I've jumped ahead a little bit to where I wanted to go. What I would like people to do first is to find their nearest plant retailer, be that a Plants Plus or whatever they're all called nowadays. But try and find a truly independent grower nearby to you. And because the industry has changed so much, because of basically of what Bunnings has done by completely buggering up the retail market, by being unfair and by squashing out all of the other competition, so that we don't have many local nurseries available just in your area. You will be hard pressed to find local growers. I would be encouraging you to look for places that are selling tube stock or fairly advanced plants by mail order, or I would contact growers directly. They might say they're wholesale and that they're trade only and whatnot, but contact them and say, okay, I live in this area. Who do you sell to that is in my area? I would like to get some of your plants. You can only ask. They may say no. They may have contracts with other retail groups, because there are a couple of other retail groups that fill in the 30% that Bunnings don't control. But yeah, it's difficult. It's one of the reasons why I'm thinking of growing some of the plants that I regularly talk about and making them available. I don't really have the facility to do it. I would need to probably need to let space or from another grower, and I just don't know if that's going to be feasible. But I could probably do small amounts of tube stock here. But the same thing is, it's going to take quite a while to get flowers for trees that swift parrots are going to use, where they feed in the outer canopy. It's a long term plan. So Naomi, I would be saying between 5 and 20 years would be my answer. So I would lean towards the quicker growing and the dwarf varieties of the plants we've talked about. Eucalyptus sideroxylon, there are a couple of selections of that, which is the ironbark, but leucoxylon is one you can look for. Also, Eucalyptus globulus, there are a number of similar or selections, dwarf selections that may be suitable. There we go. I wish I had something more positive to say, but it takes time to grow plants, which is why it's why I always say, if you don't have to remove a plant, don't remove it. If you want to eventually replace it, if you want to really replace a plant, start growing the plant that you want to replace it with well before you rip the other one out. That's really a basic tenet of the whole idea of habitat gardening. Hello, Chris. Chris says, I could go trees for the tree project. I probably could. I don't even know how I would do that. We'll look into that, Chris. What I was thinking in terms of my growing things, I would be thinking more to grow the plants that I talk about for this kind of purpose, like the swift parrot, and then I would grow 6 or 7 types of plants as tube stock, and then mail them out in the little tube boxes, maybe as a dozen. I think we talked about it before as a mixed dozen. Maybe have a little brown bird mixed dozen. Maybe have a Regent Honeyeater mixed dozen. Things like that. Naomi says it seems that seeds are more readily available. Yeah, absolutely. It's much easier to find seed, and you can source indigenous, local seed, and you can also use something like Nindathana to source nearly any kind of seed. And there's many other seed merchants as well that you can find them from. Indigenous flora and fauna groups often have a seed bank. I think, as we talked before with Fiona last week, that most groups are harvesting seed for their own purposes, so they don't have extra. But you can enter into agreements where you can contract for someone to collect seed for you and process that seed. But it's not cheap to do it like that. So, and sometimes if it's just for 1 or 2 plants, it's worth maybe saying, all right, I'll go and buy a more advanced plant for $30 or $50 than for the time and the investment that it's going to take for you to have something in 5-10 years that will be doing what you want it to do. But that's a personal decision. I know that for my little bit out the front here, I'm buying some advanced plants because I want birds utilising the space well before 5, 6, 7, 10 years, and because it's not permanent. I can't do something permanent here. I want to be able to move them, and I'm not But then there's always a risk. Plants are like a car. You don't expect them to pay you back in a financial sense, but you can enjoy them. And obviously we've got the benefit for nature, for wildlife, when we get them. So yeah. Naomi, I'll fill you in too on that issue about it's really difficult to source tube stock. Yeah, it is, and part of that is because of the growers who produce tube stock are generally not the growers who produce the plants that get sold into somewhere like Bunnings. So if a grower like Nick, but someone who was maybe supplying Bunnings with native plants, and then Bunnings stuff them around so much that they've decided to walk away from the industry, and maybe they were selling 500,000 native plants a year into, because remember, Bunnings is massive. It might have been 1 million plants a year. But if they can't make enough money and they've decided to walk away, that guy who was producing the tube stock, or guy, woman, family, that was producing the tube stock to sell to the grower who would eventually be a finisher, would grow it onto 5-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch plants. If he's gone, so is the market for the tube stock man, or family, or woman, or small co-op, whatever it may have been. And this is why the industry is so munted, which is why I really, I jumped ahead. What I'm going to be doing in the next little while is reaching out to do interviews with as many growers as I possibly can, and put these kind of questions to them about how do people who want the stock get the stock, because the system's broken. Because just go into any nursery now and look for variety. And generally the nurseries where you can get variety are independent owner-operators who will more often than not be doing the propagation themselves. So that means numbers are limited. So it means if you want a windbreak and you want, maybe you've got a long fence line and you want 700 to thousands of plants, you're probably not going to be able to source it. You'll probably have to enter into a contract for someone to grow them for you, or you do what Fiona was doing, their direct seeding. But that's a long-term project. So it's not really what we're talking about with habitat gardening, where we're talking about small domestic gardens, and it's a real problem. I know I'm always looking at, oh, gee, I'd like to get some of this, I'd like to get some of that. And generally I can't find anyone who's got stock of the things that I want, unless you are prepared to pay for large plants for $30, $70, $200, depending on the variety, because it's the only way the growers can make any money, because they can no longer make money selling small plants in volume to a nursery like Bunnings or one of the other competitors, because the margins are so small, or indeed, as Nick just demonstrated to us, negative. There's no profit. All they're doing is paying their staff. So why do it? If you're working 60, 70 hours a week, as some of these growers do, and at the end of the week, you don't have enough to buy yourself a sausage roll, but you manage to pay the wages of 5 to 10 people, why are you doing it? And that's the decision that so many of the industry have made. And it's why the industry is, at this stage, I think it's effectively broken. Because people want plants and can't get them. And people want to grow plants, but they can't sell them for a profit. It's certainly, they might make a profit, but it's not a living income. So next week I promise we'll be a bit more. We'll do something a bit more constructive. I think we're talking to a specialist grower next week, so that I'm not so ranty. But I encourage you to really look for places that you can buy what you want, and it may need you to forge a relationship with some grower, or you may need to piggyback off a local group. Chris mentioned the Tree Project. I'm going to just look up the Tree Project. A lot of these things, unless they're operating near me, I just don't know anything about them. Oh, is this the Tree Project Tasmania? We're talking. I think that's what you're talking about, isn't it? The Tree Projects. Yeah. Okay. So that's for Tasmania. Yeah. It's difficult, Chris. Too. I might also say it's often difficult to ship plants between states. Sometimes, depending on what you're growing and what the media is that your plants are growing in, there are some states that you can't ship to or you cannot receive from without them being treated in a certain way. So, yeah. Plus, it's not real. Doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? That we should be, looking at doing as much stuff as we can locally. I've seen swift parrots once in my municipality, and they were feeding on the ironbark because they're used as street trees and also lining the major arterials around here. But also, so is the lemon-scented gum, Corymbia citriodora, and spotted gums also, with Corymbia maculata. The Tree Project, thanks for suggesting that, Chris. I've just seen the information. I'll be hoping to get someone on to talk to us about that. Looks like a fantastic project going on in Tasmania. I've got to say I've been a little bit more focused on trying to build pressure to stop them cutting down the trees that are already standing in Tasmania, as much as growing for the future. But yeah, we need to understand that even though there appears to be a lot of conservation going on, a lot of people talking about the swift parrot, a lot of awareness going on, that in the areas where the box, ironbark, forests and woodlands exist, there are percentages of them still being cleared for agricultural purposes, and then suitable trees are being reduced in metropolitan and regional townships for the growth of housing. And those things aren't going to stop. So what we need to do is try and backfill if we can. So, folks, that's happy to have a conversation, chit chat as much as we can. If you would like to, I am trying to extend that sort of group of growers who understand that there are people who want to purchase plants, but that there's a real disconnect. I have spoken to a number of growers who are saying, well, we go to local markets and things like that. Well, yeah, that's great. But it doesn't help someone who is not attending that market to get the product. And many of those growers don't have a distribution network. And if and the other thing that is happening is that because Bunnings have interfered so much into the freight component for growers, that a lot of the small scale transporters are just gone. There used to be quite a few maybe 5, 10 plant transporters that a small grower could use to distribute plants, but most of those are gone. So then people have to be able to package plants in a way that they can maybe use the mail. But it's a very expensive way to distribute plants. So for someone like me who used to love going out to nurseries and looking for a bargain and buying a 6-inch or 140 mil plant for $5 or $6, those days are gone. You're talking $12, $15, $20. Those days are gone. And most of those costs will be in distribution. And it's very hard to establish a nursery now if you're in a metropolitan region. I mean, just a house with a housing block where I live is $1 million. The last place I saw, the last place sold was $890,000. That was just within a stone's throw of my place. So nobody near me is going to find a block of land and grow plants on it. That's nuts. So people are all a long way out where land is still cheap, or they already own it. So, no, every time we lose a nursery in a city area, it's never coming back. So it's all about distribution. So anyway, please go out to your independent nursery today and find something to plant. Let me get an idea too. What would you like me to focus on for the next couple of weeks? Do you want to get a nest box? Would you rather me tee up something about nest boxes, or would you rather me look for some growers to talk to? I think I've got a grower next week, but you tell me, what would you like? And when I know what you would like, I will here we are. Deb, hello, Deb. I can tell you Deb will be on the show sometime coming up, but not in this time slot. Deb has a local community centre that have a plant group and propagate indig plants. Yeah, that's the best place to start. If you have an Indigenous plant group or Indigenous flora group, sometimes councils have a nursery where they are growing and they will grow for gardens. There we go. Hello, Grant. Hi, Deb. Thanks, Deb. Too. I got your email early this morning. Thank you for that. What's Naomi got? Land. That land is $1 million plus here, and one new nursery has been started. Is that a big nursery or a small nursery, Naomi? I'd love to know that. I mean, remember, it wasn't so long ago that every little coast shopping strip had a florist that might sell some plants, and I remember lots of little places in Melbourne. I mean, I used to drive a sales van around with all this sample stock that we had available this week and what would be available in the next month. I used to pull up to all these local nurseries and take orders from them, and most of them are gone. So if you can't go to those places anymore, you got to find the places that, well, here we go. Yeah. So specialist Fern nursery, yeah. So I do notice that there still seems to be a lot of palm nurseries and a lot of places where you can go buy spiky kind of things. But in terms of for growing for specific habitat purposes, they're not there. There's plenty of people growing for re-veg projects and doing contract growing for things like shelter belts and all that kind of stuff. But they generally don't have excess stock for what you might want if you want 3 or 4 plants for your particular project in your nursery. Or they might be happy to sell them to you, but you need to go to them to pick them up, and that they may not be convenient. So that's where I was getting at, that the distribution now is really expensive for plants. And I blame Bunnings for, and the other retail groups for pretty much buggering it up by interfering in all the transport arrangements. So, but look, it's made Wesfarmers extremely profitable, and good luck to them. But I just think now we want to think outside the box. So I want your suggestions. You want me to do Naomi says, I suspect they came from a larger property in Currajong. Yeah, the other thing too, Naomi, is if someone can invest $1 million into the land, and then they've got to put all the plant and equipment on, they're people who have already made a lot of money out of something else. The idea that there's mum and dad sort of startup nurseries anymore just disappeared. But there are places that are growing specialist street trees and having contracts with municipalities and things like that. So that's all happening. But it's left this big gap for someone in retail who wants to go and buy 5, 10, 20 plants on a weekend and have more than a handful of choices. So, yeah. So we need to really treasure the specialist nurseries that exist and try and support them. But, yeah. Okay. But I do want you to tell me, since you're commenting and stuff, nest boxes or nurseries, like growers, what do you want me to do first to concentrate on? Or some other animal group or plant group. I do have a winter flowering calendar that I'm working on at the moment, and yes, and the mailing list stuff, I'm so far behind on that. But all those little handout stuff are just about right. It's been very difficult to work out how to distribute them, but we're getting there. So, counting down, I'm going to put some music on, and you can, well, while we listen to some music, I'll put Feeding the Ducks on again. You can tell me whether, here we go. You can tell me whether you would like nest boxes or growers or something else. Yes, it's my birthday next week, so I'm changing a few things up for the next year, starting on my birthday. Naomi says, nest boxes for me. I have a local guy that makes nest boxes and I want to put some up. I have a possum in one of my nest boxes now on my back deck. Okay, good. Okay, and Deb says nest boxes. Would anyone else like to make a make a contribution. I'm just seeing if I'm getting any comments on Twitter. No, so no one on Twitter is telling me what to do. All right, well, we'll see whether we can get a nest box. There's about 6 people that I want to speak to about nest boxes, and we'll do that, and we will talk about nest boxes and bat boxes, and we won't only be talking about birds and bats and possums, and we'll talk about all sorts of artificial shelters. Yes, and I will try and speak to, particularly for you, Naomi, the crew in Tasmania, as well as there's a guy in the hinterland in Brisbane who does a lot of nest boxes and artificial hollows, and we'll also try and talk to some of the people that we've spoken to in the past. Yeah, thanks, Naomi. I'm in a bunch of nest box groups. I really only want to talk to people who are able to sell plans or give them away, but we'll promote the group. I'll see if anyone's prepared to do anything other than tell us how they hang them, or something like that. So yeah, thanks for that suggestion. I'll actually star that so that I check that out. Okay, anyone else got a comment, a question for today? Tell me how much you enjoyed Fiona last week. Actually, I haven't been back and had a look at the stats, so I hope a lot of people have checked out. I've got to edit that and re-release it. If you didn't see the interview with Fiona from Mallee Conservation, I am going to replay it this evening for people who are not online in the mornings, and I'm also going to replay it tomorrow in the afternoon. So, but only on. I can tell you, Deb, I have no plan. I can just tell you what I did. I just had a spring-loaded latch, so that you could pull you could pull on a rope, small gauge rope, that would pull the latch back, and then the bottom of the box would just come out, fall down, because it wasn't really tight. So probably wouldn't be any good for really cold places, because it wasn't really well. It's only after speaking to Mick Callan that I'd even thought about the thermal insulation properties of hollows. So yeah, it was suited the rosellas that we had where I was living, but yeah, I really don't. I don't think it would be really good for wet and cold places. But yeah, if you want to get rid of starlings and Indian miners and things like that, having a way to pull the bottom out of your box is essential. And in fact, you really want that for all boxes. It's great no matter what you were using. If you can take the top and the bottom off, it means you can clean them easily. So it's great. Naomi says she loved hearing from Fiona, so informative. Love the passion she had for her property. Yeah, I think, and a great community and regional asset to inspire people to do something similar. So yeah, Fiona's work, the family's work at Mallee Conservation .com is really, really important, I think. So, yeah. And I'll probably replay that regularly on other platforms. Oh, I'm going to note too, I don't know if any of you saw, I was watching something about Meta. Meta, which is the mob that own Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram, they actually marketed, they put in the app stores what was supposed to be like a VPN, a security program to stop people being hacked and have their web traffic interfered with. But they harvested everyone's information and they cloned security cookies for a whole lot of other social media places like your Amazon account, your Snapchat account. I can't remember, there were two others. I can't remember what they were. So I am actively going to get off. I will still maintain the Bird Emergency page, but I'm going to be moving off streaming on Facebook and Instagram. I mean, they're not making it easy to stream on Instagram. So I will still do stuff on those platforms, but I won't be doing the multi-streaming because I have no idea what information they are pulling while I am connected to them. I don't know if they're able to somehow, since they're faking security cookies and whatnot, I have no faith that they're not stealing your information if you're watching on a platform. So yeah, I'm pretty furious about it. So please make sure that you are subscribed on thebirdemergency.com/YouTube, because YouTube is increasingly going to be my go-to. I'll also be doing more on Twitch, but it'll be a slightly different kind of content. And Deb, great to see you on the formerly Twitter app, and that the comments there are working. So if you're one of those people, and apparently there's a number of you still on Twitter watching, you can get involved. Okay. I think we're done. Unless you've got another comment or question or suggestion or something. Thanks, Chris, for talking about the tree project. So that is I might also mention that there is the movie. Oh, well, it looks like I've got to restart my camera, do I? I do. Stop. Restart. Are we restarted? No. Do I have to do it here? Stop. Start. Stop. Start. Oh, I think I have to restart the... reopen. There we are. I'm back, but I'm back with that stupid thing on me. Let me go to here, and there we are. I should be back now. Am I properly back? I am. I'm properly back. Yeah, Naomi got a stupid, annoying Meta message. Was that a message from Meta, or were you getting a message from a creep on Meta? Yes, I am back. I am back now. I think my audio was there the whole time, wasn't it? Yeah, it just gives up after a little while. Meta AI, yeah, it's really annoying. The more and more I find out about Meta, the less I want to be involved in it. a number of people that I speak to for other reasons, like they're not in the bird or science community on X, are finding that the amount of gambling, Bitcoin, and just flat out neo-Nazi stuff is making it a horrible place to be. I'm still finding it useful for finding out conservation and science stuff and climate stuff. But yeah, I think we've got to increasingly look at creating our own community away from this stuff. I've balked from putting the investment into setting up a little private chat community on the bird emergency that I actually administer and control, rather than off to discourse and all that. Discord, sorry. I'm really looking at so many options to do these things, but yeah, quite often I'll find one which I think is good, and then I find a bunch of drawbacks about it. So, and I've got to be spending far more. I've got to make I've got to make more money to be able to keep putting as much time as I do into bird stuff, bird and conservation stuff. So, yeah. So I really don't want to get a job, because then it'll cut into all of the time that I can put into reading and researching and reaching out to people and sharing and stuff like that. So anyway, now I think is the movie The Giants out in cinemas at the moment. Thinking about the Tree Project, there's the Bob Brown Foundation has the movie The Giants out at the moment, talking about the giants of the Tasmanian forests. It just made me think about it with the tree projects and the Styx Valley and all that kind of stuff. But we might talk about that a bit. Yeah, I'll see who I can. Look, I'm going to try and get a Swift Parrot interview. I'm going to get the Nest Boxes interview going, and please do, Naomi. I know you're subscribed on YouTube, but I want you to get into the habit of watching on YouTube too. Even though I don't think Google's the best company in the world, it's just that you just don't get the same kind of crap going on YouTube, and it's easier to do all the community stuff on YouTube than it is on. I mean, I get so much rubbish correspondence via Facebook. It's just a massive time suck. And considering how many people actually see what I put out there, it looks like the only way you get visible on Facebook is to pay. And I think if I was going to put money into getting visible, I would put money into growing the places I like to be, rather than the places that I don't like to be. So, oh, thanks, Naomi. I'm glad you're here again today. Yeah. Oh, did you have problems commenting on YouTube? I'm really pushing too, Naomi. I might say for YouTube, I still have to break that 500 subscribers barrier so that I can do a few extra things in terms of the community post, and then I want to get it up to 1,000. So I really need to branch out, don't I? I need to be speaking to more Americans and Brits and Indians and Europeans and South Americans and Africans, and but Boy, it takes a long time to organise stuff, people in different parts of the world. It's, yeah. All right, I'm just checking. I've got no other comments coming in from the other platforms, so that would be great. I look forward to catching up with you for Habitat Gardening next Saturday, 9:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I need to redo my video. It's now GMT plus 10, not plus 11, I believe. Yes, Naomi, Sri Lankans are very keen on birding. So are the Indians. Yeah, I think I'm back to sort of firing on all cylinders. So I'm going to be available to speak to people at far more hours of the week than I had over the last month or so. And as you know, if you... Oh, I've got to tell you, don't I? Anzac Day is the 25th, but Anzac Day is also World Penguin Day, so I'm hoping to have some penguin content. The 29th, which is next Monday, I'm speaking to Claire Neems about the adaptability of migratory birds. Migratory Bird Day, World Migratory Bird Day, is coming up in May, and I'm going to be speaking to more people about light pollution, bird strike on windows, and the other challenges for many of the migratory birds. Next Saturday, of course, is Habitat Gardening. I will be doing a stream on Tuesday for my birthday, and it will probably involve replaying some things that you may not have heard. And yeah, there's a story I want to tell, but I don't know if I'll tell it on that day. And Holly is coming back. We haven't worked out when. We're going to change slightly how Monday with Holly is done, because it may not be on Mondays. But I'll let you know when that's sort of more solidified. Gregory Andrews is coming on again soon too, and yeah, but Claire Neems is the next one that is definitely locked in. There we are. What's it taken me half an hour to say see you later? So see you later. I'm Grant. I'm a bird nerd. This has been Habitat Gardening on the Bird Emergency. Please subscribe to birdemergency.com/YouTube. Or if you like my ranty stuff, thebirdemergency.com/Twitter. You might enjoy that. Birds of the Australian Botanic Gardens, Mount Annan. That, I'm guessing, is Glenn. Hello, Glenn. Thanks. We got Facebook love too from Naomi and from Birds of the Australian Botanic Gardens, Mount Annan. It's also Saturday, and Shroom Saturday you'll be able to see a post on just about all of my socials with some of Glenn's fantastic photography of mushrooms. Yes. So that should be on any of the ones you want. Oh, actually, before you all go, tell me, what is the platform that you use most to find news and information about projects and, people in the space? And what is the social media that you use most for, like, networking or chit-chatting? Glenn is saying... Glenn's been doing a tour today. That's great. At the Mount Annan Botanic Gardens. If you're in the Sydney region, get out to the Mount Annan Botanic Gardens. And also check out the Photography Friday that I did with Glenn. And also check out the habitat gardening, that episode we did with Glenn. Now, I've only got one person on Twitch at the moment. I really want to do more with Twitch and get more community focus there. But I guess what I wanted to know from all of you, without asking directly, how many of you actually ever look at TikTok? My first seen and heard will become regular again as of Tuesday. And I think it takes so long to upload to everywhere. We'll see what we're gonna do. All right, that is it. I don't think there's anything else I want to say other than have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. Get active. Okay, Glenn's main place is Instagram. Okay. All right, now, well, since I've got you both here and you're chatting, do you look at reels, stories, or posts? And do you actually do interaction with people on Insta? Like, is it where you DM and make contact with people? Or is it where you see something that someone is doing and then you go off to their website or something like that? Yeah, I just want to get an idea of how you guys use it to get an idea of what I should be doing and the kind of content. Because I've really got to streamline what I'm doing and get consistent to grow. As Deb knows, I'm very concerned about growth at the moment. So, yeah, and I want to streamline the how it's presented. I want to do a lot more interviews, and I want to streamline how they are presented. Okay, this is a good point, Naomi. So you interact with people on both Insta and Facebook, and check people's web pages if I'm truly fascinated. Yeah. So I will like people, and I'll like their stuff or retweet or repost if I think it's useful or interesting or whatnot. But I reach out to a lot of people about interviews on Insta and Twitter. But then when it gets conversational and stuff like that, I tend to find that YouTube's great for that. So Glenn, or Birds of the Australian Botanic Gardens, Mount Annan, DMs both ways on Insta. Some contact me via Facebook and Messenger. Less on reels, posts and stories. We'll go to web pages from interesting posts, yeah. So it looks like we're all using it pretty much the same way, but are we, like, in a way, I've found that the best way to actually develop community has been doing the live streams. Be interested in your thoughts on that, because none of us are really in the other, like, in places. Yeah, well, see, Naomi's just said she never really contacts anyone via YouTube except me. Now, why I do the multi-streaming is to try and pull everyone in from one place. And I think this is really the most effective way to quickly build a community. And our numbers are still, like, tiny, right? They're still tiny. Although I'm really pleased with the growth that's been happening on Twitter recently. So the only thing I can say for Elon Musk is that thing that he has wanted to do, which is to become more of a live streaming platform, seems to be working, and I would much prefer to do the streams this way than to do Twitter Spaces, but I haven't tried the Twitter Spaces really, so maybe we'll do that. But I'm a little bit concerned about getting people in from, say, Twitter and then destroying what we've sort of got going here. So I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Oh, there must have been an update on one of the operating systems, because I'm being asked to do a whole lot of notifications again. I'll be careful too. This week I've had heaps of the Australia Post, you have a delivery, blah, 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 messages, but the MyGov one looks pretty good. Don't click on a MyGov text message ever. Naomi says, I hate to say it, I would never rejoin Twitter. I hope you never go to just streaming there. I can categorically say, Naomi, I will never be just streaming on Twitter. And if most of the bird people and the sciencey people were to leave Twitter, I would too. The only reason I'm so active still there is that in our space it's still effective, and it's by far my biggest. While we're here, I mean, considering we've finished, but I'm not going anywhere for the minute. I'm just going to see. I'm just going to check a couple of stats. I'm just going to see, because I haven't been uploading on. I have not been uploading on any new podcasts for ages, other than what goes into YouTube Music. I must say I've hardly done anything. I really have to do stuff on the just having a look at my my stats on the podcast, and not too bad in the last 30 days, but it's really died off because I haven't been putting any effort into it at all. Why don't I have a look at while I'm here, let's have a look at YouTube. Just bear with me, folks. I'm just going to have a look at what the penetration has been on the YouTube. Yeah, I need to push a bit harder, don't I, for that? Oh, I can say Fiona's live stream has done really well, and I'm now being suggested a lot more in the oh, that's good. That's good. I'll go into advanced mode. Have a look at the countries. Traffic source. Traffic source. Suggested videos. Oh, gee, but still people are finding me from outside. Okay. Well, that's interesting. That is interesting. Okay, so I just need to really get a whole lot more interviews going and get right back into it again. And but personally, so that you know what's what, I want to build the YouTube and the community and the live community, and that hopefully other things will build off that, because I enjoy it so much more than any of the other social media stuff that I do. I do really like the live interactions that we have. Anyway, I just did my stats checking, and actually, let's. How many of you, Naomi? You came to me through the podcast, but for the rest of you, I think I got to know Deb through Twitter, and I think that was mainly through talking. I think that all started with talking about photography, and I think it might have even been. I think that might have been through Sandy Horn and even Dr. Nick and the Owls. So Glenn from the podcast. Thank you, Glenn. Okay, so yeah, I really neglected the podcast. Yeah, I really have. But I've got piles of stuff to put in there, so I better get onto it and do it. That would be good, wouldn't it? That would be good. Yeah. All right, let's make sure we do that. Those of you on X or Twitter, if there's some of you who are not in Australia, I would love to know. And also, hello, Facebook. There's some new people on Facebook. So please introduce yourself and say hello. Just let us know where you're listening from or watching from. Because if you're not in Australia, I'd love to know, because I'd like to develop some more content in this habitat gardening space that might be relevant to you, and maybe do shows in a time slot that might be better for you. So don't be shy. Let me know. And also those of you on Twitter or X, let me know, because I will adapt to what will suit you. It may well be that even this 9:30 thing, because I wanted to do it before people went out and did things, but maybe another time might be better. I'm going to run replays, and we'll find out whether people are watching them in different times. Okay, Vicky. Yes, Vicky. I must say, hello. How are you too, Vicky? And well done. I think I noticed some of your bird watching, bird ID posts in the last little while, haven't I? Vicky, that's one of the things that is really broken with Facebook. That the notifications don't seem to go out when I'm going live. And people don't seem to get them unless even when I schedule for a week or so ahead, or days ahead. It's another one of the reasons why I want to move more over to YouTube, because I have the community post there, and that if you're subscribed to me, you can easily just check the community post, and it should get into your feed. It's becoming very difficult to be visible on YouTube. Not YouTube, on Facebook. And I think it's the same kind of thing on Instagram. It's certainly, Instagram is suboptimal because I can't do the whole stream there. And it's not conducive to interaction unless I am only streaming on Instagram from my phone or from the computer. So I guess it works if you've got a big community based on one of those. I don't. So my biggest audience is Twitter and YouTube. Yeah. And you have to make a whole lot of compromises to be able to go to all the different places. That sometimes I don't produce the show in a way that I would like to, because I am multi-streaming and trying to build an audience. Maybe I will. Look, I don't know. Vicky, I'd love it if you followed on YouTube and were prepared to watch on YouTube. I might say too, you get a higher quality stream, you get a higher quality audio on YouTube, and I see less technical problems. I often have to stop and restart for Facebook. It doesn't pick the stream up. It's so that might be something that I have to consider. What I might start doing is starting the stream on Facebook and going to everywhere, and then after half an hour or something, or after an hour, I might just drop everything off, and then everyone who wants to stay around, I know a lot of people I follow and that I watch regularly do their streams that way, is that there'll be an hour, they'll go everywhere, and then they just cut everything off except for maybe YouTube, and maybe I'd leave Twitter going, and maybe I will have a Instagram only thing just from the phone, but then they only get me, they don't get the rest of the content, so they don't get me bringing things in and out and sharing web pages and all that kind of stuff. So, there's compromises to be made. But yeah, who's going bird watching today? I'm bathing. I don't know if you can hear Loz. He's just outside my window. Loz has a new trick today too. First time I heard this morning. He now mimics the blackbirds, the cluck, cluck, cluck that blackbirds make. He's now doing that. He is now composing his own songs out of all the different whistles and humming and the stuff that I do with him when he's in the room with me or when he's on my shoulder. So he, she, it, they are doing that. And is now shaking my hand too with, if I put my finger up, still not stepping up, but he is now doing that. Has the rain finished up there in Sydney too, by the way, Glenn? Glenn's out in the gardens, pretty windy. Nothing too exciting has been seen today. It's cool, overcast, but no rain here today. We had rain overnight. I heard some musk lorikeets early this morning. I didn't see them, but I heard them. Loz, short for Loswig van Screechhoven. Very funny. Loz has a new large cage coming, so he'll not big enough to be free flight, but he will be able to get lots more exercise in there, and harness training takes a long time. He's still not ready to go into the harness, but I'm hoping that within 6 months or so, I'll be able to free fly Loz outside, and after his new cage arrives, or his new It's almost big enough to be an aviary. It's like for a solo bird. So it'd be big enough for me to get a companion for Loz as time goes on. But after that, his backpack, birdie backpack, will become part of the scenery, and then Loz will be out with me on all my walks in the backpack, so I can get to have more stimulation. So yes, so Loz is certainly enjoying his time or her time. I have to do the DNA test so that I know whether Loz is Mr. Loz or Ms. Loz, Master Loz. Obviously becoming far more confident and happier, and doing a lot more stuff with us, interacting in different ways with us, which is great for Loz, and I'm certainly enjoying it. I'm learning a lot more about lorikeets too, and I am not surprised that they are such a problem when their numbers are massive and they are intruding on the living spaces of other birds. They are very clever, they're very adaptable, and they have a very good memory. Loz picks up things very, very quickly. Very, 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 very good, and becoming very confident quickly too. All right, well, geez, we've done a bit of ranting today. We've done a bit of useful stuff today. I've learned a few things today too. Nice to see Vicky, Chris, Naomi, and Glenn for commenting. And Deb. Anyone else? I think that was it, isn't it? I go back on my things. And yeah, thanks for... Oh yes, Nestbook's Tale. Thank you for that, Naomi. I better get back to... Naomi says, went out, but it's totally crappy weather here. Might go in the arvo. My bird watching today will be from inside or only on my trip to... I think I've got to get some more ginger. I think I'll be out of ginger by the time I chop up for my lunch. Yes, okay. So we'll get I'll just get some interviews lined up. Hopefully one for next week. Hopefully I can do nest boxes for you next week. Otherwise we might be starting to talk about winter flowering plants. Or we might have a local nursery on for an interview. I've got one that hopefully it's going to be locked in the next day or so. Happy World Penguin Day for, what day is it? Thursday next week. While many people are observing another significant day on our national calendar, I will be thinking about the plight of the penguins. Thanks, folks. See ya. I'm really going this time. Have a great weekend. I'm Grant. I'm a bird nerd. I'm also a plant nerd. This is the Bird Emergency Habitat Gardening. See you next Saturday, same time, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please join us live. See ya.